right here is an awesome man of God. Love this guy. Not only in faith, but his dedication, his love of this building and this church family, this community. He makes this place a better place. Amen. And so about 3 weeks ago or so, my wife said, you got to get Isaac up here to do Wednesday night. So tonight's the night. Church, would you give our brother Isaac Teresiani a big hand? He's going to bless you tonight. Here you go.
Thank you so much, Pastor. Thank you. Thank you so much. So, before I start, usually Pastor throws away candies when he does that. I don't know the candies, but I got one pizza gift card. I picked it up when I went for coffee this morning. This is basically, I have only one question. I'll just give you a clue so that you can guess on whom I'm going to talk to. I know there are some of my friends I shared on the WhatsApp group what I'm going to share. So hopefully you don't have to give the answer. Okay, I'm going to talk about somebody from the Bible who rebelled against God. But the reason he rebelled against God is because he knew God too much. And he's actually right about it. So there's this person in the Bible, anybody wants to take a guess, who rebelled against God, and the reason he rebelled against God was he knew about God too much. And God wouldn't dispute with him. He was actually right about it.
No.
What was that? Good. Glenn. Yeah, right, that's Jonah. So actually works for it. So there you go. Good. Okay, it's Jonah. So actually the reason I went to Jonah is two reasons. One of the things I was reminded of that recently is when Pastor was pointing us to the minor prophets in the Old Testament. And Jonah was kind of one of my favorites because in the book of Jonah is where, according to me, it reveals the heart of God. It reveals the tender heart of God, or it reveals the compassion of God. And if for the lack of words, I would say that is the book in the Bible where God's innermost being gets exposed and God's heart gets exposed. So I wanted to talk about that. And another reason, the main reason is, this month is kind of a significant month for me because I grew up my mother was a Pentecostal, I grew up in church, and I went to every VBS, I went to every summer camp, I went to every Sunday class, but once I went to college, high school, college, I went far from the Lord. So by the time I was in my early 20s, I was gone so far, I wouldn't want to dwell too much on it, but if I was smoking cigarette, I would feel actually I'm doing something healthy that day because whatever else I was doing was much more than that. So that's how far I went, and that's when God saved me, and He saved me when I was 24. The reason I bring it up today is that is in the March of the year 98. So today is actually, this month is actually 21 years since I got saved. So at the end of 37 years. So I'm believing huge something this year. I mean, 37 years finished, 3 and 7. It's coming, and that's going to do. But the reason I'm talking about that in today's context is when I got saved. I remember when I got saved and I was going to this church. That's the first time I'm going to a spirit-filled church after I got saved. I knew when I went there, it was almost like a homecoming for me, or returning back to God, or a prodigal coming back home. And when I was sitting in church that day, I had an encounter with God. And the encounter went like this. God was telling me, son, I'm so happy that you're back home. You know, all those years when you did all those things, when you went away from me, I was like a mother was crying for a lost son. I was crying for you. I was saying, my son, where have you gone? And when I came and was sitting there in the church, God told me, son, I'm so happy you're back home. So that's the day when I had an encounter of God. And the encounter was, God is a compassionate God. God is a loving God. I remember I was sitting in church. One of my friends had given me a ride because I was in a different city. And he was sitting next to me. And I couldn't bring my face up. I had my face buried on my knees and I was weeping and weeping. Because that's the day God encountered to me and told me that I love you. I have a compassion for you. So if I were following God all these 21 years, The main reason is I didn't get saved so that I will escape hell. I didn't get saved so that I will not get punished. I didn't get saved because I will not get disciplined by God. I believe I want to be saved because God is a compassionate God. It is His love that draws me to Him. It is His compassion that draws me to Him, not His condemnation or not hell or anything else. No, it's His love. And that is what I wanted to share from you from the book of Jonah today. Because in the book of Jonah is all about God exposing His compassionate heart to His people. So what I'm going to do today is, as far as time goes, there are 4 chapters in the book of Jonah. I'm going to take one verse, 1 or 2 verses from each chapter, and throw a theme with you, throw a thought around that. So I would encourage you later on, when you get the time, I would encourage you to go back to the book of Jonah and have your own meditation, because I believe what we're going to see today is just going to be some sort of an appetizer. So whenever you go back, I believe God will talk to you in a unique way according to your season in your life. So I'm just going to throw some pointers in each of the 4 chapters. So having said all that, I'm going to go to the chapter 1, and I want to go to verse number 17. Jonah chapter 1 and verse number 17. So it says, "Now the Lord had prepared a great fish to swallow Jonah, and Jonah was in the belly of the fish 3 days and 3 nights." We all know the story. I'll just do a quick recap of the story. That is Jonah. He's from Israel, obviously. And there is a city called Nineveh. Nineveh in the modern day is Iraq. It's the city of Mosul. I think Saddam Hussein came from that city. And in those days, in Jonah's days, it was a huge city. And it was a very powerful city. It was a very prosperous city. But the wickedness in the city was so huge that God told, "Time's done for these guys. I'm going to punish these guys." But of all people, He chooses Jonah to go and warn them before He punishes them. Jonah obviously that's like the enemy city for him. That's a city that they do not like. Okay, so probably Jonah was happy when God told He's going to punish the city, but God is telling, "No, I want you to go and warn them before they're going to punish them." Jonah obviously doesn't like it, so he rebels. He goes the other way, and he goes on a ship, and you know the story. The ship goes through a storm, and they're almost going to get shipwrecked. And Jonah realizes his mistake. He says, "The people in the ship, throw me in the sea and you'll all be safe." And that's what happened. They throw him in the sea. You know the story of the fish. That's the first thing that comes to our mind when you hear the story of Jonah, that somebody was actually in the belly of the fish for 3 days. And after 3 days, when he repents, the fish throws him out. Then he goes to the city of Nineveh. He warns them, and he has one big ministry, and the people repent, and God does not bring the punishment upon them. And the story ends with Jonah sulking with God. Okay, it's a very unique story, but so that's the story. So if we go to chapter number 1, here we see verse number 70. "Now the Lord had prepared a great fish to swallow Jonah." I want you to catch the phrase, "prepared a great fish." Okay, so this fish was prepared by God so many years ago. Okay, when they say, but the Bible never says whale. We usually typically think Jonah was in the belly of a whale. But the Bible just says it is a great fish. I do not know what fish it was, but I assume it could be a whale. Okay, and typically all these big fishes, they live for some fishes live even for more than 100 years. So I have a suspicion probably this fish was born even before Jonah was born. The reason I'm talking all this is God was preparing a fish to bring a tron back to Him. Jonah was being a tron, and to bring a tron back to Him, God would go to great lengths to prepare a fish. And what type of fish would it be? It should be some sort of a special fish, because the requirements for this particular fish is it should have a human in its belly for 3 days, and should not kill that human, and it should not get killed by itself also. And there should be some special fish that God would specially design, okay, just to bring a tron back to Him. The reason I want to pick it out for you today is, if that is how much God would prepare for a rebel, to bring back a rebel to Him, how much more will He prepare for you and me when we are setting out to do God's will in our life? When you are going to set out to do God's purpose in your life, how much more you think God will prepare something for you. So even as you're sitting here in the Wednesday evening, uncertain of how God is going to fulfill His purpose for us, probably you're thinking, we're confused what exactly God wants to do in our life. Or probably sometimes we know what God is going to do, but we do not know how God is going to do it. I believe that God is preparing someone somewhere. God is preparing an idea somewhere. God is preparing a business somewhere. God is preparing a company somewhere. God is preparing someone whose one purpose is going to be to meet you at that particular time in your life and accelerate your purpose in your life. Amen. Okay, so I believe, so what I want to say in this thing is, God loves you so much that He will prepare things for you. God loves you so much that even before you were conceived in your mother's womb, He'll prepare something for you. I believe for Jonah, God prepared for him something, a fish. I don't think the fish was just born overnight. It was a large fish which was born many years before. And God had prepared that fish for one purpose, to go take Jonah, have him for 3 days, and vomit him out. Right. That's a special fish, and God would do that. So I believe, I want us to be encouraged today that God is preparing someone somewhere for you. They do not know that person. He could be in the other side of the globe right now, but He is going to meet you at the right time so that He will accelerate God's purpose in your life. Amen. So, and going onwards, just imagine if these sailors had thrown out Jonah 2 hours before. Right. The great fish would have missed it. Or what if they thrown him 2 hours after? Because remember, this is a huge sea. The ship is going somewhere, it's getting the storms, the ship is just going randomly somewhere, and the fish obviously is going in random in some other direction. What is the probability that the fish will be at that place just when they throw him out? Right. Okay? And that cannot happen unless God orchestrates it for him. In the same way, you may be going about your life uncertain what is going to do, but you're going to meet that special person, you're going to meet that special vision, you're going to get that special dream, you're going to get that special idea at the right time. Amen. So that it will accelerate you into what God has purposed for you. The first chapter, what I wanted to go out with is, God loves you so much that He will prepare things for you even before you're born. Amen. God is going to create people whose one purpose in life is going to be to accelerate your vision. I'm reminded of the story when David and his men were out fighting, and back in his camp, all the women and all the treasures, somebody else came, looted, and went away. Okay, so when these men came back to the camp was empty. All their wives and children are gone, and all their money and all their treasure is gone. And these people, the David's men, were waiting to stone him because they were so frustrated. At that part of time, David himself doesn't know what to do. So he goes down in a random direction, hoping the people who raided their camp are somewhere in that direction. But what happened there is, one of the servants of the raiders who came and took away all these things, one of their servants fell sick. So they left him behind and they went away. And David so happened to meet that particular guy, and he gives him the right direction. So I believe that guy's one purpose in life was to fall sick at that particular day, wait for David and give him the directions. Okay? So God is going to prepare people, and something is going to happen in their life so that they will come and meet you. And they will meet you at your point of need. So that's the first thing. God prepared things ahead of you. So even if you're sitting here confused, even if you're sitting here worried what is going to happen, I believe God is perfecting and orchestrating things in a perfect way. And that takes me to the second chapter, chapter number 2, and I want to see verse number 4. Then I said, I have been cast out of your sight, yet I will look again toward your holy temple. What I wanted to say in this chapter is, it's talking about a God, compassionate God. There's one thing about God, He can never outrun His mercy. He can never go far away from His mercy. You can try to run away from the presence of God, like what Jonah did. He tried to run away from His presence. And actually this verse says, he was cast out of His presence. So he may be cast out of His presence, he may be going out of God's presence, but one thing he couldn't go away from, God's mercy. You can never outrun God's mercy. You can go how far you can go. I'm an example. I knew everything. I knew everything in the Bible. I grew up in the church, and I was doing all the things outside of the world, outside in the world. I knew exactly what I was doing was not right. But still I would do it. But even though I went so far away, even though I went far away from the presence of God, but still was never a day away from God's mercy in my life. All I had to do was, however far I went, just stop there, turn around, ask God for mercy, and He'll take me in. Amen. That is me. That's the biggest thing. So I remember the day I got saved. I I'd gone so far away from God, and I was even hesitant to say the sinner's prayer. I was sitting in my bedroom back in India, and I knelt down to pray, and I just prayed for maybe even 1 minute. But that's all I needed to get back to God.
Amen.
That's all it needed to get back to God. That's all it needed to earn God's mercy. That's something about God. You can never run away from His mercy. You can run away from God's presence, but you can never outrun God's mercy. It's still waiting for you wherever you go. And that takes us to verse number 8. Those who regard worthless idols forsake their own mercy. I come from India, and there are so many other philosophies, so many other thinking around the world. They always try to earn their way back to God. They always try to do something so that I can go back to God. And that's what it says here, those who regard worthless idols forsake their own mercy. Sometimes even within Christianity we're seen where we think we need to do the good works so that I'll get something special from God. I need to pay some restitution so that I can get back to earn God's mercy. Sometimes we think, even after you're saved, I have to do something so that I earn God's mercy once again. No, once God's given, it's given. We can never earn it. Sometimes we hold on to the worthless ideas or worthless philosophies, hold on to it, thinking that we can earn God's mercy. It's never going to be like that. God's mercy is free, but obviously after we receive God's mercy, we are inspired to give restitution or doing something else or go and apologize to someone. But that's a follow-up. But that by itself is never going to earn God's mercy. I struggle with it sometimes. I sometimes thought that sometimes I did something wrong. I have to do the restitution to God, earn God's mercy. But that's silly at the end of the day, because what God paid on the cross for me, I can never do it in my life. Right. I can do what I can do. I can do everything I do. But that's never going to earn God's mercy in my life. And I cannot overdo it on top of what God did. But still, I want to do it because I found God's love in my life. I want to do it, but at the same time, it's never going to earn God's mercy in my life. So the second chapter, what I wanted to think of when you go back and read the book of Jonah is, you're never too far from God's mercy. You can try to run away from God's presence, but you can never run away from God's mercy in your life. All you have to do is just stop somewhere and turn around. Remember when Solomon built the temple, God's glory filled the temple. All the people are worshiping. Everyone was happy. Okay, but Solomon, in God's wisdom, he knew one day the same people may rebel. One day they may go against God. So at that time, when he dedicates the temple of God, he says, God, today in your presence, you're worshiping you. But that could be someday coming further down the years when these same people could rebel against you, and you could punish them, and you could send them to exile to faraway countries. Even then, God, however far they may be away from you, if they would only stop, turn around, look towards His temple, call upon you, they will find your mercy. That's how God is. You can go however far. You can be exiled to a faraway country. You can be in a country where you can never turn back. All you have to do is just stand there, turn around, call upon God. His mercy is right there waiting for you. So what I was trying to say is, God's mercy is right next to you, wherever you are. You could be far away from God's presence, but His mercy is just right next to you. All you have to do is just turn around, ask for it, and God is going to give it to you. And that's God's compassion, God. So first thing we saw in first chapter 1, He prepares the way for you. Second, you can never outrun God's mercy in your life. And that brings us to the interesting chapter number 3. We're going to read verse number 1. Now the word of the Lord came to Jonah the second time, saying, Now the word of the Lord came to Jonah the second time, saying, Arise, go to Nineveh, the great city, and preach to it the message that I tell you. All these years when I knew about the book of Jonah, I always thought that he rebelled, he went in the ship, he got thrown away, he got into the belly of the great fish, and the fish vomited him. And for all these years I thought, when he got to the beach, the first thing he went to Nineveh and preached to them, because he learned the lesson, you don't rebel against God. But what I see over here is, looks like he didn't go back to Nineveh. After he went out in the fish, he didn't go back. God had to again tell him, go to Nineveh. I was always wondered, why would that be? Then I thought, probably the reason could be, Jonah thought, I had a call in my life. God had a purpose in my life. God wanted to do something through my life, but I messed it up. And I just badly saved my life and I came back. Okay, so probably Jonah thought, probably God sent somebody else. Probably Jonah thought, that purpose in my life is taken away from me. Somebody else is doing that in Nineveh. So probably that could be one of the reasons why Jonah didn't go. Okay, but at least here we see one thing we know for sure, God did not send anyone else. He was waiting for Jonah to repent because he'll send Jonah alone. Because for Nineveh, God's plan always was, it's going to be Jonah, my man, who's going to go and tell it. Yeah. Sometimes Jonah may rebel, he may delay it, okay, but still I'll wait for Jonah to repent, and he is the person who's going to take the gospel to the city of Nineveh. So why I'm saying that is, God's call in your life is irrevocable. You might have messed it up, but probably God told you to do something and you thought, no, I cannot do it, you messed it up. And probably you may be sitting today thinking, but God's still going to use me. I believe from this chapter 1, he says, God is waiting for you. God has a purpose for you. Probably God has somebody out there who he wants you to take the gospel to them. Or probably God has somebody out there who's not saved, but God will not let anybody else take the gospel to them. He wants you to take the gospel to them. Or probably somebody else over there is hurting, and God will not send anybody else to be a blessing to them. He will want you to be the blessing to them. Probably you are delaying, but God's going to wait on you. God could do it any other way. God could send his angels, he could get somebody else. But God, for some peculiar reason, which we do not understand, in his infinite wisdom, he'll want his particular person to do that for him. I wouldn't know why God would choose Jonah. Because whatever we read about Jonah, nothing great is about him, or nothing fantastic is about him. But for God, some reason, he would exactly say it's Jonah. Probably angels in heavens were telling to God, looks like Jonah messed it up, why don't you send somebody else? Yeah. God said, no, I want Jonah. I'll wait for him. I'll prepare a fish for him, I'll bring him back, I'll tell him again, and I'll wait for him. So one reason I'm telling to you is there are souls waiting for you to take the gospel to them. There are some souls that are waiting just for you to take the gospel to them. Probably, or even in this case, we see the judgment for Nineveh was waiting for Jonah. Actually, the people of Nineveh got this extra grace time because Jonah was not ready. So that could be someone somewhere else there. They're getting that extra grace time because you may not be ready. Thank you, Pastor. So God is waiting for you. Okay, I believe there are so many people, even as this church, we are all part of this church planted in Morgan Hill. There are people waiting for us, and you're going to take it to them. But what I want to say here is that takes us to the next verse. That gets more interesting once. So here we see Jonah had to be told again. There's a vision waiting for Jonah. This verse is so beautiful. It says,